This week you'll be writing both the discussion and conclusion sections for the laboratory you completed. Even though the conclusion should be the last section of your lab report, because it's easier to write, let's start with that. In the conclusion of your lab report, you should briefly restate and summarize the results of the experiment. This section should also include if the experiment was completed successfully and explain changes that could be implemented to make the experiment better. The improvements to the lab need to be thought out. Don't simply say that the experiment could be improved by shortening the procedure or lengthening the laboratory period. For example, say you were writing a conclusion section for a recrystallization and melting point lab. An example conclusion could look like this. The product was successfully recrystallized with a 73% recovery. The melting point of 68 to 70 degrees Celsius is outside the reported literature range of 74 to 75 degrees Celsius. This suggests that the isolated product is not pure. This experiment could be improved for the future by completing the recrystallization more slowly, preventing the inclusion of impurities or solvent. So let's move back to the discussion section. The discussion section is where you explain the data you obtained, whether or not your experiment was successful, and any errors that may have occurred. You should use the data your group presented in the data and results section to construct a convincing scientific argument that you successfully performed the experiment. When you use information presented in the data and results section, make sure to refer to the particular figure, table, or equation where the information is. Any claims that are made in this section need to be supported by experimental or literature data and follow sound scientific reasoning. So some questions to include in this section. What do the results mean? Do the results show the experiment was successful? And what are some sources of error for this experiment? When presenting sources of error, go beyond stating that the poor result was due to human error. Every mistake your group makes can be considered human error. You won't receive credit for that. If you have a low % yield and something was spilled, include it. If a reaction wasn't heated to the correct temperature, or if it was heated too much and allowed to burn, mention that. This is the most important section of your laboratory report because you have the opportunity to show your TA that you understood what was going on in the experiment. Use this to your advantage.